In this video, we're going to go over where you can acquire all of the Remnant 2, the Awakened King DLC weapons, of which there are 7 in total, broken down as 4 melee weapons, 2 long guns, and a handgun as well. Now, before you can acquire every weapon in the Awakened King DLC, you firstly need to make sure, after you've installed the DLC, that you go through and complete campaign again in order to be able to get the handgun. Just bear in mind that when you do re-roll your campaign, you will keep all of your gear, but you are going to need to go through the game again at least until the Ashen Wasteland on Root Earth, which will be the final world you can access in Remnant 2 story. You're going to need to do it, unfortunately. It's just a requirement to get the gun. But when you do so, please make sure that you start your campaign off from Losomn in the Morrow Parish starting point, as you need to get the Tormented Asylum, which is where you fight the Nightweaver boss, who's the world boss on Losomn, from the Morrow Parish starting point. If you don't do so, then you're going to need to go all the way through in order to be able to get it in adventure mode. And to get the handgun, you also need to make sure that you don't die from the start of the process until you actually craft the handgun. So obviously we're going to get to that in a little while. Firstly, we're going to cover off the melee weapons, starting off with the Abyssal hook, which you can acquire in the second section of the Forlorn Coast. Once you've gone through the first main biome in the game, from the start of the DLC, you're going to come to a checkpoint. You're going to be at the back end of the fishing village in the Forlorn Coast. Take a right, go past the hogs that are there, and then go down in the well. Deal with all of the enemies, of which there will be a fair few. You're going to have green fiends, purple fiends, as well as some bulbous creatures. You're then going to need to go up the ladder to your left, take out the 2 special beasts that are up there. You've got 1 black, 1 white. They can be tough, so make sure you drop back down and deal with them accordingly. Then go back up the ladder, go around to your left, look to your right, there's the Abyssal hook. Now, the Abyssal hook is a fairly powerful weapon, especially if you put your resources into it. And it's also got an ability baked into it called Fathomless Deep, where charged melee hits grant Fathomless Deep, which increases melee stagger by 10% per stack for 5 seconds. You get a maximum of 3 stacks. You can also equip a mutator as well. Pretty decent weapon, this one.
Glad that's over.
Next up, we'll take a look at where you can acquire the Ritualist Scythe melee weapon, which is a very tricky one to get. You need to be in the Forgotten Commune, which is a new biome in the Awakened King DLC. You're then going to have to go through to the second section with the mini checkpoint, make your way around, and then drop down to where you're going to find the first of 2 befouled altars, which work very similar to the Root Nexus that you will more than likely have already taken care of over on Yaesha. The befouled altar will essentially just send out a scream. It won't actually attack you, but the scream will bring a lot of enemies your way, including green fiends, purple fiends, and specials, and it can be a challenge. So if you need a little bit of respite, run back up the stairs, heal, go back down, but just be aware the enemies won't stop until you've smashed up the altar. With the first altar destroyed, you're then going to be able to collect the Scythe blade. You're then going to need to go back to the mini checkpoint and rest, as you've more than likely burnt for a fair few resources taking this thing down. Then go through the Forgotten Commune biome, making sure that you open up the gate after you drop down the little half ladder. Then go through the water section to the very final room where you're going to be able to find the second Befouled altar. Same sort of thing, give it a whack, it's going to scream, get a load of enemies your way, take everything down, smash the altar. You're then going to be able to acquire the Scythe hilt. Once you've got both the Scythe hilt and the Scythe blade, firstly, congratulations, they were fairly tough fights. Now rotate the hilt around to the neck, where you're then going to be able to interact with the hilt, selecting the blade, which will then craft the Ritualist Scythe. Now the Ritualist Scythe is a very, very good weapon, as it can deal multiple attacks when you hold down the attack button, be it with a backstep or a normal attack, providing you've got the stamina. When you max this thing out, it's an absolute beast, and it's also got a baked-in ability called Reaver, which increases your melee damage by 10% if the target is suffering from a negative status effect. Now if you're going through as the Ritualist archetype, which the Ritualist Scythe is available from the start for, you're going to be dealing elemental damage left, right and centre. This weapon is invaluable. Normal circumstances, if you're not playing as an elemental build, if you're just kind of doing normal damage, then it's probably not going to be the one for you. But if you are capable of putting, say, the Miasma ability on, where you cause bleed, overload, shock, and a few other things as well, it's an incredible ability. It basically just nukes any enemy that you come up against. Hit them as well with the Ritualist Scythe, you're going to be dealing an incredible amount of damage. Next up we've got the Steel Scythe, which is a nice easy one to acquire, as you simply need to go over to Ward 13 and purchase it from Brabus for the amazing cost of 500 scrap. Now the Steel Scythe is essentially a much more watered down version of the Ritualist Scythe, however it will still do multiple attacks when you hold down the attack button. Again, providing you've got the stamina to do so, do a backstep, hold down the attack button. You can easily plunge this thing into an enemy 3 times, and if you have got the resources to level it up, or if you're struggling to get through any of the DLC, this could be the weapon to help you out, especially if you haven't got any other melee weapons from the base game.
Think you can handle this? Watch yourself, stranger. Well then, clean yet.
I got you in my sight.
Oh, got you inside out. Ain't no escape. This ain't good. Come who's next?
And the final melee weapon on the list is called Wrathbringer. Now, in order to craft Wrathbringer, you need to take down the one true king and acquire the Tormented Pommel, which you can then take over to Macabre in Ward 13, allowing you to craft the Wrathbringer, which is quite simply one of the hardest hitting melee weapons in the entire game. This thing is an absolute beast. Now, what makes the Wrathbringer melee weapon so powerful is its baked-in ability called Awakening, where incoming damage grants Awakening, which increases melee damage by 5% per stack for 10 seconds, and you can have a maximum of 10 stacks. So every time you take a bit of damage, this thing will essentially power up and hit a lot harder. If you're getting surrounded by enemies or if you're consistently taking damage, it's very, very easy on this thing to max out your 10 stacks, or if not, just simply get up 6, 7 or 8. You're then going to be absolutely smacking enemies for thousands of damage. Now for me, I've also paired the Guts Mutator with the Wrathbringer. You can get the Guts Mutator by taking down the Cursed Wretch Aberration, link below the like button for that one, which increases your melee critical chance by 5% when grey health is present. And it is an absolute beast. If you power yourself up and you get the right abilities on for this weapon, you will be absolutely wrecking enemies.
Asgard is approaching!
This ain't good.
Who's that? Get him! Outsiders aren't welcome here! Outsiders aren't welcome here! You here?
Right, now as fun as it is swinging melee weapons around, the main kind of aspect of Remnant 2 is guns. So, let's look at the first long gun you can acquire in the DLC, called Monarch, which, in order to do so, you need to take down the one true king and acquire the Agony Spike. You can then take that over to Macabre in Ward 13 and craft yourself a Monarch, which is an incredibly good gun. Now, the Monarch long gun isn't the best gun, it isn't the most powerful gun, it doesn't have the biggest magazine, and it sure as hell doesn't deal the most damage. But what it has got is a baked-in ability called Chain of Command, which activates Harpoon mode. You need to fire the harpoon to mark a target, which will then cause all of your primary fire to become homing rounds, which deal 15% reduced damage. But don't worry too much about that, because the fact that this thing deals homing rounds, it does essentially, you can fire this anywhere, and providing you're not kind of firing it into a wall directly, these rounds will go off and track the enemy, and they will impact wherever you've put your harpoon, and they are very fast and good at what they do. So essentially, you can basically stick a harpoon in an enemy, get yourself behind some cover, fire over the top of the cover, you're completely safe and out of harm's way from taking any damage whatsoever, whilst you're also filling up the enemy with a ton of rounds. It's an incredibly good gun. Now, you also build influence when you're in harpoon mode, and when your influence fills, Monarch automatically reloads, it creates a shockwave and gains 20% increased damage and infinite reserves, which lasts for 20 seconds. So if you can essentially deal a fair bit of damage, you're then going to send out a nice wave sending everything back. You then got infinite ammo for 20 seconds. Just unload. The chances of anything still being alive, if you've got this thing at level 10, are pretty much nil. Next up, we've got one of my personal favourite weapons in Remnant 2, the Sparkfire shotgun long gun. Now, you need to be able to go to the Derelict Lighthouse in the Awakened King DLC, which is a new biome. It'll be randomly occurring if you've already finished a one-shot, but once you've got yourself in the Derelict Lighthouse, make your way through to a large building where you're going to need to take down 2 aberrations at once, Gore Carver and Thunder Piercer. Gore Carver is essentially like Ripsaw that you would more than likely have already taken down over in the, or from the Morrow Parish starting point in Losomn. He just comes up to you, tries slashing you around, and Thunder Piercer is essentially, like I said in the other guy that we put up for it, a shotgun wielding maniac. Take them both down, you're then going to require the lighthouse key. From there, make your way all the way through the Derelict Lighthouse biome till you come to the bridge that will lead you across the water to the lighthouse. Before going up the stairs, once you've taken care of the special witch, you need to take a left down a path which will then lead you into the basement of the lighthouse. Interact with the door down here, where you're then going to be able to notice that the key doesn't work, so rotate it around until you can interact with it, which will then flip the clasp of the key, allowing you to open up the door, go through, look over to your right, get yourself one of the best guns in the game. Now, one of my favourite things about the Sparkfire shotgun is that it has neither a modification or a mutator. Some of the guns from the base game, I didn't shit on them, but I wasn't really kind about them either, because they didn't have a modification. However, this thing benefits from not having a mod, as the weapon itself is incredibly powerful. A lot of the guns from the base game that didn't have a modification could have really done with one. This thing is an absolute beast, so the fact that you can put your own mod and your own mutator into the Sparkfire shotgun just increases its efficiency in combat so much more. Now, the Sparkfire shotgun will fire incendiary shells that apply burning, which deal 219.6 fire damage over 6 seconds, which essentially you're just melting enemies as you go through. And if you max this thing out to plus 20, it's then going to be dealing 300 damage per shot. This weapon, I can't really describe it to you without you actually seeing it in action. It just gets you through the game. If there's an enemy that you're struggling with, get a Sparkfire shotgun, go up to them, few rounds, there's no more enemy, there's no more problem.
Pitiful just terrified! Terrified company! Ah, thou wicked son into the
Right, and now we come to the big elephant in the room, the Anguish handgun, which is why at the start of this video I said that you need to go off and complete the campaign again after you've installed the Awakened King DLC. In doing so, you're then going to be able to get you through to any of the 4 burning biomes. You've got the Sunken Haunt, the Derelict Lighthouse, Cotton's Kiln, or the Butcher's Quarter. Any of those biomes have the chance to spawn the Ethereal Manor. Now, I've already put up a guide for how to get Anguish. What I'm going to do is essentially place that guide, the footage, the audio and everything else into this video. That's not me being lazy, but we've gone into so much detail in that video that I want you to be able to get hold of Anguish if you're prepared to go through the game without dying, to get your hands on one of the weapons in the game that I'm probably the most conflicted on that I've ever been. On one hand, getting Anguish isn't worth getting Anguish. But if you've already got Anguish, it's fucking brilliant. But that said, if you do have any questions or if you need any further information or advice, grab me down in the comments or over on X at Griffin's Guides. Hopefully I'll be able to help you out one way or another. Very best of luck getting this one done. Now the weapon has a shocking requirement before you can begin the process to unlock it. You will need to re-roll the main campaign and then play through to Root Earth in order to acquire Anguish after the Awakened King DLC has released. If you've already completed the campaign before the DLC released, very good for you, but unfortunately you're going to have to replay the entire thing. Now why the developers have done this is beyond me, because surely if you complete a story, then that should be that story completed. However, I ran through several of these biomes looking for the people that you need to find in order to acquire Anguish, and they were never there until I went off myself and re-rolled the campaign and completed the entire bloody thing again. Now one good thing about re-rolling campaign is if you've already gone through it once, your gear should be more than powerful enough to go through and do it again. So you should already know the path, you should know what you're doing, but unfortunately it is a requirement that you're going to have to fulfill before you can begin the quest to go after Anguish. Now just ensure that when you do start your campaign, make sure that you start it on Losomn with the Morrow Parish starting point, as you need to access the Tormented Asylum, which is where you fight the Nightweaver world boss. If for whatever reason you start it off on either the Forlorn Coast or the Beatific Palace, that's not going to work out, as you're then going to need Morrow Parish in adventure mode, because you will need the Tormented Asylum. There's no way around that. And if that wasn't enough of a requirement, you're also going to need to make sure that the entire way through your path to get the Anguish handgun, you don't die. If you use liquid death, you fall off a ledge, or if the enemies kill you, you're then going to need to go back and restart the entire process again just to be able to start the path to get Anguish. So for me, I highly recommend getting the Challenger as your archetype, level it up to level 10 so it's at its most powerful state, equip your best relics, your best gear and your best armour. Don't worry about how you look, don't worry about what your friends think or any kind of bullshit like that. Just equip your best gear, because you need to make sure that you don't die. I died as the Challenger against Bruin just to make sure that it would fulfill the requirements. Obviously, it's what we do when we make guides. We have to go through several different circumstances, but dying as the Challenger doesn't actually count as a death when you go for Anguish. Any other archetype, if you die, game over. You're going to have to restart the entire process again. So once you've gone off and completed campaign, you then need to re-roll the DLC from the Forlorn Coast starting point, where you're going to need to find either the Derelict Lighthouse, Cotton's Kiln or the Sunken Haunt biomes, essentially any biome which is on fire, where you then, given the procedurally generated nature of Remnant 2, have a very rare random chance of the ethereal mana spawning in that biome. This essentially looks a bit like the Asylum, bloody great building with the gates that have already been smashed open. You need to go through, go up to the second floor and then speak to an NPC who will be sitting in a chair. He will kind of jump scare, grab hold of you and then shout at you to wake up. That will then begin your path to acquire the Anguish handgun. So once the NPC's told you to wake up, you're then going to be in a dreamy version of the ethereal mana. You'll be back out the front. You need to open up your inventory and use the liquid death consumable, which will then kill you. Now, I know that sounds a little bit kind of backwards for acquiring a weapon, but trust me, it's what you need to do. Now, rather than waking up at a normal checkpoint, after you've killed yourself when you're in the dream version of the ethereal mana, you're going to wake up in a new biome called the Consecrated Throne. Go forward and collect the Crimson Dreamstone ring from the throne, and then use the mini checkpoint to walk back to Ward 13. Once you're in Ward 13, head past the firing range and go down the ramp towards the NPC standing at the fire barrel, who you will need to interact with, who will then disappear on you.
Wanna play Clementine and the Giant Rat?
Wake up.
Now with that done, go to the World Stone. If you got the Red Throne as your starting point through campaign, then get yourself over there. If not, re-roll adventure mode. Now normally that will reset all of your progress. However, when you're going after Anguish, you are safe to re-roll adventure mode. Either way, get yourself over to Yasha, go to the Red Throne. You then need to take the first right before going down the main path towards the Empress's chambers. Deal with the palace guards, go all the way around to the final room and speak with the Dran until the screen flashes white again, where he'll again disappear.
You're knocking on the door of reality? But from which side? The Abyssal tech still hasn't figured it out. Wake up!
With the first 2 Dran found, you then need to go back to Ward 13, switch your game mode to campaign, then travel to the Labyrinth Fractured Ingress checkpoint, head up the stairs to the left of the checkpoint, then go around the walkway where you will again find and speak to the Dran, who you'll need to interact with 6 times, who will then again leave in a flash of light.
I see a hero with 1,000 faces and myriad deaths. I see you watching me, but do you see who's watching you? Well, you can't shoot and dodge away from all your problems, you know. It will end before it begins. Wake up!
Now with that done, we're off to Nerude. You need Tal Ratha's story, so you need the Forgotten Prison as your starting point. If you got it in campaign, then fantastic. If you're unlucky like me, I had Shahala, so I needed to go through Nerude. Again, you need to make sure that you don't die, and Nerude is a tough biome. So just take your time, equip a very powerful weapon such as the Enigma shotgun, or maybe Nightfall, Merciless, anything that you've got that can really crowd control enemies. Make sure that you've got that. Then go all the way through to Tal Ratha's prison, where you're then going to be able to interact with the Dran over to the left of the checkpoint, standing in front of the open kind of zombie pods that are there. Interact with him 6 times, where he will then yet again disappear. Now you are nearly done, so stick with the process.
Oh, you're getting warmer. Don't disturb the silence. Live and die, live and die, again and again, until the end. Oh, you can't run from the enemy within. All will go dark before the light returns. Wake up!
Right, from here, you need to go back to Ward 13, switch your game mode over to campaign, or if you're already on there from the root, fantastic, stay there. Either way, you need to go to Root Earth in the Ashen Wasteland biome, go all the way through, just past the train yard, where you had the kind of fight against all of the root enemies. You're going to find a mini checkpoint just past here. Just behind the checkpoint, leaning up against the chain link fence, will be another Dran. Interact with the Dran as many times as it takes until he finally tells you to wake up and he disappears again.
They see you. They taste you. They're coming for you. You will watch as she devours all. How quickly it all falls to ash. When will the key realize it is the door? How far would you go? You're almost there. Wake up!
Now for the tricky part. This is the bit that kind of fucked me up when I was doing this. I had the Beatific Palace as my starting point for a campaign on Losomn, and it didn't even occur to me that I needed to go somewhere else. However, you need the Morrow Parish starting point, as you need the Tormented Asylum where you fight the Nightweaver boss. So if you've done that on campaign, if you listened to me earlier on, fantastic, well done. If you haven't, you then need to start off from the Morrow Parish starting point in adventure mode and go all the way through to the Tormented Asylum. If you haven't done so, and I'm going to show you a bit of footage of me dying against Brewing, just so that way you can see that we were still able to keep the process going after a death, but only as the challenger. Any other archetype doesn't have the ability to revive itself. I know the handler can get you back up, but for me, I'm not 100% sure if that counts as a death, as you then need to be revived by an ally, essentially, whereas the challenger can just punch the ground and get itself back up. Once you're in the Tormented Asylum, it's simply a case of taking a right look into the wall just by the grate where the special can come out of. You're then going to be able to find the Dran.
I want to wake up. No, I want to wake up. I want to wake up! Is this some kind of joke? We're the same, you and I. Are you dead? Or just dreaming? Are you dreaming? Or just dead? We're all mad.
Either way though, whichever way you do it, once you've interacted with all of the other Dran that we've already mentioned in this video, as well as the one in the Tormented Asylum, you're then going to receive the Dran's Dream. Once you have the Dran's Dream, you can then go into your inventory and equip it on your quick slot, then back out of your inventory, use the Dran's Dream, where you're then going to be taken off to a new biome, the Forgotten Null, which is probably the most serene biome in the entire game so far. Now once you're in this dream world sitting on the coast, you're going to be able to go over to the Dran, who will no longer speak to you, thankfully, but just to his right will be the occult vessel you can pick up. Once you've got the occult vessel, it's then simply a case of using the mini checkpoint, go back to Ward 13, speak with Macabre, where as long as you've got 7 Luminite Crystal and 1,000 scrap, you're then going to be finally able to craft Anguish.
You're back. All right, let's see what you've got.
Right, now that you have Anguish, it's going to be up to you whether or not you think it's worth it, which for me, I'm conflicted, as, in all honesty, it's a bit crap, but it's really, really good at the same time. Now, considering the amount we've had to do in order to acquire the Anguish handgun, it's a bit shit, to be honest. On one hand, it's one of the best weapons in the game, but on the other hand, considering everything we've had to do, I'm expecting something more powerful than a Aphelion, and I haven't got it. I'm expecting something that gives you more health regeneration than Nightfall, and I haven't got it. What this thing does is it's essentially a shotgun that wants to be an assault rifle, that also wants to be a bit of a sniper rifle, as well as thinking it's a grenade launcher, and it doesn't really excel at any of those things. Yes, it's nice having a multi-tool, essentially. You know, you have one thing in your pocket and it can do 100 different things. That's essentially what this is. But there's no focus on the weapon. Yes, its base damage is as a shotgun, but the shotgun rounds, whilst they ricochet around the area and they dig into targets, you only get a base damage of 17.5 and the magazine's only 5. Then, if you hold down the attack button whilst aiming, you're then going to charge up a shot, which is essentially molten metal. It will then fire into the enemy, but in the process of doing so, it then hurts you. Then if we equip the mod, which is called Loathe the Weak, it rapidly fires volatile needles that explode after 1.5 seconds, dealing 30 explosive damage, which again is really good, but it doesn't last all that long. It's only got a mod requirement of 500, so it does recharge fairly quickly, but it's all just a bit kind of, I'm really struggling on how to put the words across. You can probably tell by all my stuttering and muttering, but I can't recommend doing the process that it takes to get Anguish. I can't recommend the weapon. If it was a little bit easier, or if it doesn't matter if you died or anything else, then fair enough. But you need to be an end game level player to be able to go through the entire Remnant 2 DLC without dying. There's no way around it. The game's a tough game. Any opportunity that a boss has to kill you, it will do so. The enemy, especially the Fae and Losomn, if they all gang up on you, you're dead. It's as simple as that. To get through all of that and then to have this thing as a reward, it's just not worth it. But given the fact that I've just said it's not worth it and I don't recommend that you go off and get it and all the rest of it, I can't stop using the poxy thing. Every time I have a new run through on Remnant 2, I always kick myself out. I either go the Nightfall, Merciless, Sparkfire Shotgun, or what's the other one? The Aphelion as my main. And then for a secondary, I was always using Starshot. It's a fantastic weapon. You get it over in the road. Excellent, excellent weapon. The Starburst ability that it's got, it just annihilates the field. But I'm choosing Anguish more and more. And to be honest, I don't know why. It's really good at what it does do when it does it. If you know what I mean. Like I say, I'm kind of talking out my arsehole here a little bit. Because whilst I don't recommend getting Anguish, I don't recommend you going through the process, struggling through campaign, making sure that you don't die in a game designed to kill you. I cannot recommend you go off and do all of that for a weapon that's this crap. But if you go off and you do get the Anguish handgun, it's I don't want to say it, but it's really, really good. If you fire a bolt of that molten slag into an enemy that then explodes, it will deal AoE damage into another group of enemies that are around, which obviously helps. The more damage you can do to enemies, the better. The volatile needles that you can fire off as the mod are really good. It does come with a mutator slot, so again, you can equip something else in there to improve the elemental damage that you can cause, and again, that's really, really good. The process of getting Anguish is not good. If there was a way to duplicate this weapon and drop it, I'd do it for you all day long, not a problem. So actually going off and getting Anguish, I can't recommend doing it because it's not worth it. If you have done it and you've got Anguish, then it's an absolute beast against single target enemies. If you've got a boss or an aberration or a tough special that you're struggling with, just flick the mod on and it will annihilate the enemy. But when you combine that with a really small magazine, and the main firing element of the gun doesn't really hit all that hard, and then if you charge it up it hurts you. I've never been so conflicted about a weapon in my entire career or gaming life. If you've already got Anguish, then equip it and use it, you won't regret it. But the process to go off and get it, don't bother. But anyway, that's my take on where you can get Anguish and a little bit about the gun. Hopefully it's been informative for you. If you're a fan of these really long, drawn out videos, subscribe for more and I'll see you on the next one. So that's a look at where you can acquire all 7 weapons in the Awakened King DLC for Remnant 2. Like I say, you've got 4 melee weapons that we've covered off, 2 long guns, and then the Anguish handgun. Which ones are you using? Are you going for any of them? Have you even installed the DLC? Are you here just to check out what weapons are available, to see if you want to make a purchase? Some of them are fantastic, so I would recommend it. However, it's entirely your choice. As is, whether or not you feel like subscribing to Griffin's Gaming Guides, which I would very much appreciate. If you're a fan of these collection videos, let me know down in the comments and we'll definitely look at putting more together. Either way though, whichever you decide to do, take care of yourselves out there and I'll see you on the next one.